Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Yishai Fleischer Show. We're going to start in just 60 more seconds with Rav Mike Feuer. We're going to talk about the Torah portion of the week, VaYetze, and also, as in the theme that I started last week, I hope you like this background, this little stairway to heaven, if you will. Okay, that's definitely the name of the show. Let's bring on Rabbi Mike, and we'll actually start the real show in just about a minute. Let's see if Rav Mike is there. Rav Mike Feuer, shalom.
I am here, shalom.
All right, yeah. I like your scholarly background there. Those are some serious tomes.
It's actually wallpaper.
Oh wow, that's so modern. Excellent. All right. Well, I'm very excited to have to start the show with you today. I'm very excited to talk about a Torah portion that is dear to my heart because of my time that I spent in beautiful Beit El, living there. So we'll get to talking about it in just a second. Let's just ask our beloved audience to say hello and to tell us how the picture and sound looks, if everything is metuam, if everything is correct and right in this world. And would love to hear from...
That's a big ask.
That's right. It is a big ask.
Right in this world.
I just want to hear if people are hearing us right, if the volumes are equal, if the internet's looking nice, if the camera is nice. So I'd love to hear from folks in the comment section. There's Lou. Lou, when you're around, I know everything is good and holy in this world. Okay, things are correct.
Not, you'll know about it.
That's right. Okay, Shalom, Yishai and Rav Mike. Let's give Lou a 1, 2, 3. Count to 10, Rav Mike. Give him a countdown.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, that's great, and Lou, I hope everybody sounds good here.
Why?
And I wanted to hear your sound, and we got right now. Just before we start the show, somebody Wilson writes. He names the Christian deity and says, "Love to you." He says, "Jay loves you and all." I want to just say thanks a lot, but as you know, Wilson. This is an Orthodox Jewish show. We do not believe in foreign gods or in Christian gods or in Christian prophets, etc. And this is meant as no disrespect. I respect your rights to believe in whatever you want. And this show is a way to connect to Israel. So if you don't mind, I will send the blessings of the God of Israel to you because I think that's my role. And if you want to be part of what I'm sending out, what we're sending out to you, Bevakasha, welcome. You are welcome. But I would ask that you refrain from blessing us in the names of other gods, not to disrespect, but it's just not our thing, and you know that, and folks know that. And I just don't want my show to be a platform for other beliefs or religions. Rav Mike, is that did I say it in a fair way?
I think you said it quite nicely. Well said.
Very good. And Lou Weiss says liftoff, and therefore we'll begin. Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Yishai Fleischer Show, broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope, and of course on the Land of Israel Network. If you're listening to us later on, you probably don't know that Rav Mike and I are face-to-face virtually here through this amazing platform, and we've got a beautiful Torah portion of VaYetze. The Torah portion, the star of the Torah portion, is Yaakov and his newly found wives and children, but one of the most graphic images that stands out in this Torah portion is the dream of the ladder. And so now, in going with the theme that I started developing last week, which is trying to find a picture that relates to the Torah portion. Last week we had red soup, and today we have right behind me a beautiful ladder stairway to heaven that is really. Connecting between heaven and earth, right? So now let's go back to last week's Torah portion. We had this great moment of receiving the blessings, and the way that the blessings were received, the way that forefather Jacob received them is through a bit of trickery, and he went into his father's tent and acted like he was Esav, but he was, as we talked about last week, the firstborn, since he had rightfully purchased it, the birthright. But one of the things that Jacob says is that he says, I may get cursed instead of blessed through this process. And his mother says, don't worry, my son, your curse is upon me. In simple words, don't worry, you're not going to get cursed. And everything seems to go smoothly, other than the incredible lion-like roar of his angry and violent brother. That didn't go so well. But in any case, he got the blessing. So, yay, you crossed the finish line. But suddenly, what's that? Yeah, that's right. That's right. But suddenly, it ain't over at all. And suddenly, Rivka, his mother, says to him, you actually have to run away. You have to run away, and your brother wants to kill you, and you have to run away. And this part is not in the Bible. I'm just adding this. Jacob is like, wait a minute. It says about me that I'm a tent dweller. I'm not going to have any tents. I come from a wealthy family. I'm not going to have wealth. I know how to make soup. I'm probably not going to have any soup. And suddenly, he's going to find himself in the beginning of this week's Torah portion on a barren hilltop, which I could tell you is quite windy and lonely, and it's dark out there. And he's probably thinking to himself as he's running away from his brother Esau, and his whole, basically, the whole setup of his life has been undermined altogether, that he must think to himself, whoa, I really did get a curse. It was not a blessing after all.
Yeah, I mean, it's a moment of, I think, complete collapse on a certain level, right? The last thread that was holding him was this confidence that at least his mother knew what she was doing.
Right.
Right, as you see his tension in approaching that moment of entering into Yitzchak, like his last grasp was like, is this really a good idea? And she says, yeah, trust me. And then, boom, next thing he knows, he's on the run, or on the lam. I guess that could be a good, right. Jacob on the lam would be your show name.
That's right.
But what's really important, we've spoken about it many times in the past, what's important to me is that the first sort of self-revelation that derives from this experience for Yaakov is he lets it go. He understands, it's kind of a 12-step moment if people are familiar with the 12-step program, that he's hit rock bottom, and that he can't control this situation. It's not in his hands, and that he's just going to lay down and go to sleep. He's just going to let it go.
But is this a sleep like a Jonah type sleep where you're like running away and you're like not you don't want to deal with it anymore, and it's a kind of the sleep of a depressive, or is it the peace, or is it the sleep of a resignation, a peace with a tough reality? Like, how do you see that his sleep here?
I see it as actually neither, but I think that your comparison is a good one. See that Jonah's also running away from something, but his running away is an evasion. He's avoiding his task, divine given task. And of course, what wakes Jonah up is not God, but rather the Rav Chovel, the captain of the ship, who proceeds to then toss him overboard. I mean, there's steps in between. You can go learn Sefer Yonah, but what Yaakov's doing is basically giving it over to God. There's an element in this part of the story of Mesirat Nefesh, of a giving over of one's soul in totality that really begins with this moment of going to sleep. You're muted. I don't know if you're speaking to me. He gives himself over completely, goes to sleep, and because of that, he's able to dream. Because so often our dreams are thwarted by the way we think the world ought to be, the way we think it is, etc., our desire to control it. And what gives him this capacity to dream is really the sense that there's nothing left for me to do here. Mm-hmm. I'm going to sleep.
Sorry about that. Going to sleep is like sometimes you stay up and you just can't. You're like. There's sometimes when you're so tense you can't sleep, but other times you say, okay, I guess I can't. I guess I have to accept it the way it is, and I have just to say, Hashem, thank you for what it is.
And tomorrow's a new day,
right? Now, but it's not going to be enough for him to just lay down. Let's read the verses. Let's read the verses because these are some of the kind of most dramatic verses, and the Kabbalists who kind of react to verses in different ways. You could tell that there's a seismic Kabbalistic moment here. In fact, some of the Kabbalistic books are called after the Sulam, or there's the famous Kabbalistic yeshiva Sulam Yaakov. Wait, no, Sulam Yaakov is your yeshiva, right? Former yeshiva, that's right. No, what's the one in the old city? That is like the Kabbalah.
The Beit El Yeshiva.
Beit El, right? Yeshivat Beit El. That's right. Okay. I've always wanted to go in there.
With the silver door.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go.
It just looks like a place of magic.
Right.
If you haven't seen the silver door, people, you got to wander around the Jewish quarter of the old city.
Right. It's in the Jewish quarter. There's a silver door that leads to like a. Yeah, it leads into like the Kabbalistic yeshiva.
Into the depth.
Right. My kid's cat has walked in here. Right, get out! Oh my gosh!
Interesting that you just disavowed any responsibility for that cat.
It is my kid's cat.
I'm just noticing. You're saying
it's true.
Like
anyway,
your wife, your child just following.
Okay, at the next interval when you're speaking, I'll ask. I'll interrupt the show. I'll mute it and ask one of my kids to come and get the cat. Yeah, the cat doesn't even have a real name. After months and months, basically the cat name is Kiyato. Okay, all right, fine. That's a fine name. Okay, so anyway, he leaves Beersheba and he goes towards Haran. Again, Haran, northern Syria, southern Turkey. That's a big city called Haran. It's in the area of Aram, between the two rivers. And he goes and he hits a spot. Now, the rabbis kind of famously add a lot of info here and say, well, he was heading towards Haran, but he forgot to pray in Jerusalem. And he kind of reverses, goes back to Jerusalem. And that's really, it's not pshat, but it does say that he left Beersheba and he going to Haran. On the way there, he bumps into this place, and he takes the rocks of the place, mi'avnei hamakom, from the rocks of the place, vayasem mirashotav, he puts it either under his head as a pillow, or most commentators agree it's kind of a semicircle around, around the head, so that animals won't like gnaw at your ear when you're sleeping. Makes sense to you as a woodland person?
Hard to sleep when vipers are crowing in your ear. I agree.
Yeah. Yes. And you say viper lightly. I actually, when I lived in Beit El, encountered a very large and very dangerous viper. Vayishkav makomahu, and he lay down in that place. Vayachalom. Now here we are beginning the first of the dream sequences, where there's going to be 2 in Jacob and 2 in Joseph. Right? There's going to be we're starting like the dream talking.
Yep.
Right. This is the dream communication, when God communicates to you in a dream. Now, maybe I should ask before, look, why does God communicate in a dream? Why is that preferable than give it to me straight? Like, why give it to me in a with a mashal, a parable, and a dream? And what is a dream as opposed to regular prophetic communication? Or like, what's the point of telling us it's a dream? What does that mean?
Well, actually, I think to understand the answer, it's important to take a step back to what you were noting, which is that all we know from the pshat, from the plain text, is that this is a makom. This is a place. Right? And as you pointed out, there's, in the rabbinic mind, a tremendous complexity to this place. It's Mount Moriah, right, in the future site of Jerusalem, or maybe it's actually Beit El, as we see when he wakes up in the morning, or, he went to Haran and the earth folds and he comes back, meaning this is a place where the boundaries of space have already shifted. They don't really have the same waking day relevance. Furthermore, the rabbis note that when it says Kiva Hashemesh, right, that because the sun had come, meaning gone down, that God rushed sunset to get Yaakov to stop there, meaning the boundaries of time have been loosed as well. But once you loose the boundaries of time and space, you are in the world of dreams. And that's kind of the answer that you're looking for, I think, which is that we as human beings have this huge thing on our shoulders that we rely upon to make sense of the world. And it works pretty well most of the time. But it has one major trap, is that we have a tendency to confuse what's in here with what's out there.
Right.
Right. And I think one of the powerful ways in which we're meant to undermine that and expand our relationship to creation is through dreams. Because the reality is, once you let this really take over, what's out there looks very different, right? You fall asleep and all mix and match, and fantasy and reality, and the boundaries all shift. The boundaries shift, and that opens up the possibility that really what's out there is the creator, and not some defined set of parameters that you can manipulate like an idolater. And therefore, the communication that happens with Yaakov, and as you pointed out, Yosef, also, by the way, Daniel belongs very importantly to that chain, is not just the content of the prophetic message, but in many ways, the experience of it, which is essential. God is challenging the premise that there's anything other than God and the person being communicated with. Everything else is negotiable.
Maybe another way to look at it is that the dream is ostensibly a place of darkness, a place where you're turning off your conscious mind, and suddenly, as you're saying, you're kind of creating a space for other things to come in, for the things that your eyes are not seeing, but your mind is processing. In any case, he is, I think it's fair to say, like Yonah, in a place of darkness for a second there. He's been kicked out of his house, and he's in a place of darkness, and he's not a tent. It says that he's a tent dweller. Suddenly, he's not dwelling in any tent at all. Rather, he's on this barren hilltop, and his pillow is a rock. And so he closes his eyes, and suddenly he sees something that is way beyond what you think you're going to see. And this is really a very iconic image. The ladder with the angels going up and down. Let's just read that.
Well, wait, careful. Don't ignore its essence. It's a ladder shemutzav arza v'roshu b'shamayma, meaning it's planted firmly on the ground, but its head is in the heavens. And that's what allows the angels to go up and down. Right. And in that sense, it is the embodiment of the task of Am Yisrael in the world. That's what's being revealed to Yaakov. It is meant to be him.
That he himself is meant to be this ladder, you're saying?
Yeah, there's an element that just you can trace throughout all Torah, and to our very day, is that one of the principal beliefs, if you will, of Am Yisrael is there must always be a place where heaven and earth meet. Right. Where the possible and the actual, where the divine and the created, however you want to conceptualize, heaven and earth, it must always be that place in creation and also in a person's life, and the ladder represents that. And what's being revealed to Yaakov, one of the Midrashim says that he looked up and he saw his own face engraved in the throne of glory, meaning that he was above and below.
Right. Let's say that again. So in the dream, according to the sages, he sees the seat of glory, the kind of chair of glory, and he sees kind of an image of God, and strangely, the face is his face.
Not the image of God, the face engraved on the throne. It's a very important distinction.
Okay, good. Okay.
Right? Because the throne is the place where the presence comes to rest. And that's the message there. That Yaakov
so it's engraved on the throne. What does that mean? Where is it engraved?
That he himself is the place where God comes to rest in the world.
Right. That's what I was telling you, that I had this idea for this Pesach, that the time when you're supposed to open the door and look for Elijah the prophet outside of your door, I'm going to put a mirror. I'm going to secretly put a mirror this year.
I like that one.
Yeah, I'm just going to be like, you're going to open the door, you're going to be like, I'm going to do it like surreptitiously.
Remind me of the time. I got a good Hasidic story for you on that. I think Sarah told you to before.
I may be seeing you this Sabbath, and so therefore that may be a time to. That would be really great. The ladder is indeed something that a Jewish person is supposed to embody, and the idea of being very firmly rooted on earth with the head in the heavens. I think that's a very Jewish concept, which is like, don't go to an ashram and detach yourself from this world. I want you to keep your feet planted in this world. That's why I created you as a human being in this world. I didn't create you to escape humanity, to escape your lot of being a physical being, but the head has to be in the heavens, and Dafka especially, or specifically, that communication between heaven and earth, those angels moving up and down, those packets of information, if you will, that are connecting between heaven and earth. That's actually what I want to happen in this world, and I want that connection to be strong. And it's not the same. Heaven is not earth, and earth is not heaven, but they're connected in some way. By the way, I just want to tell you, today started off a little bit sadly. One of my favorite anti-Israel jihadi spokesmen, what I call a suit and tie jihadi, who is a part of the narrative warfare against Israel. His name is Muhammad El-Gindi, who is a professor at Georgetown. He finally blocked me today. And I was just like, oh, come on, man. We were just having some fun here. I was calling you out for what you are, and you were calling me out for what you think I am. His final post to me, though, today was, he said, you're a religious fanatic, a racist, a supremacist, and something else, and you're banned. Oh, an Islamophobe, and now you're banned, or blocked.
He didn't call you a Nazi, though.
No, he did not call me a Nazi. No, we were. I was disheartened to see that my that my like sparring partner there just come on, like I said to him, the only thing that was true in that statement is the final thing that you blocked me, but I am neither a religious fanatic, or not in the sense that you mean it anyway, and certainly not a racist, and certainly not an Islamophobe, and certainly not a supremacist. That's the most annoying one of them all. Supremacist. That's just stupid.
I think he was one of the Supremes.
What do you mean? Like you mean like the band, like the Four Tops, like Motown? Is that what you're talking about? Motown today is Islamic. So if you mean to say that I'm cool with them,
Don't go there. Don't go there.
Any case, I was disappointed. And the reason I say this is because like there was a ladder between, like, we were sparring, but he ended the conversation abruptly with these unfair accusations, and there's no communication. So now I have to look for another bad guy who articulates well the anti-Israel position, so that I could expose it.
It's worth noting for people's general relationship work that the power move that was done at the end, because the need to have the last word is always a very important need to explore. Notice what he did is he didn't just block you. He had the final word to define the conversation, to define you, in fact, and then blocked it.
I think he didn't like it when I started calling him jihadist, because I bet you he doesn't even think of himself exactly as a jihadist anyway. But he is a spokesman for the anti-Israel narrative. He a few days ago, what happened was, here's the straw that really broke the camel's back. He wrote, Zionism is a late 19th century human invention, etc., etc., etc. So I wrote, by saying that, you're just denying that Jewish people have yearned to have sovereignty in the land of Israel for the last 2,000 years and have had two commonwealths here 3,000 years ago and 2,000 years ago. And that's the heart of the bigoted narrative. And because you're just erasing our history. And then what happened was that Ben Shapiro retweeted that.
Ooh.
So it got to a lot of people, and I don't think he liked that at all. So
listen, it's classic academic speak. I mean, he's correct in a strict definitional form that Zionism as a political movement is a product of the 19th century. But the way in which that's being used obviously is quite different.
Come on, Rav Mike, come on. Is it a fair statement to say that? And we know what he means. Come on, like let's read between the lines. He's not speaking about it formulaically. He's saying this whole thing is a late 19th century thing, and then he's going to hook it up into European colonialism and Europeanism.
I saw where it was going.
Right. So we know what he's saying.
I know, but it's actually an excellent follow-up from our discussion last week about how truth and fact are not always the same thing, and that one has to be very careful in their relationship. I mean, his statement was factual, but it was not expressive of the truth. Right. Because it was driven in my world by a desire to undermine Ratzon Hashem.
But it's also undermining the plain meaning of what Zionism is, which is a yearning to return to the land of Israel. It's like, take away that word, that technical word, call it a different word. The yearning to return to the land of Israel, is that a mid 19th century late 19th century concept? Nonsense, exactly. So, and what is he really trying to do? To erase the intellectual foundations of our story, and to just turn it into an evil thing of colonialization and occupation, as opposed to a beautiful thing of an ingathering of the exiles. So,
I also to erase the complexity of it, because the reality is that the sort of certain painful elements of the story which are associated with the 19th century, and perhaps some of the colonial tools that were put at our disposal in the 19th century, right, can't be ignored. But the thing is the difference between people like ourselves and people like that is that we have a standard of measure by which we're guided, and therefore those elements whether they're painful, ugly, beautiful, inspiring, etc., they don't shift fundamentally how we understand the world and what we are pursuing, right? And I say that more to our fellow brothers and sisters than I do to this gentleman who I know not and really care not at all about.
And
his ability to absorb the whole is very limited.
It's interesting because on the very same day, there's another Twitterer whose name is Khalifa, and he's from UAE and Bahrain. I don't remember which one. I think UAE, and he's one of these wonderful spokesmen for the Abraham Accords, and he just showed this picture of 4 Middle East flags together: Israel, Bahrain, Sudan, UAE. And I've got a new guy that I found now in Oman. There's tons of pro-Israel folks in Oman, and so like, and they're just coming out of the woodwork. And here's this Arab but non-Middle Easterner, El Gindi, ripping Israel for every who knows what, and here come these Arabs locally and are just like, no, dude, it's time to get past this stuff. And they started tweeting at him. I've been blocked since then, but I'm moved. I'm really moved. I'll tell you. I think this Abraham Accords thing is a real thing, and the realness of it is the relationships that are being
always
real connections. I just cannot wait to fly out there. I just cannot wait. That's where I'm going to take Malka.
Anyway, until we make the road trip.
Yeah, the road trip. That's right. Oh, you saw that. That's right. Because my mom and I were talking, and we realized you could drive. If everything goes good with Saudi Arabia, you'll be able to drive from Israel on a road trip, sea to sea, right? From the Mediterranean to the Persian Gulf. You'll be able to drive right through Saudi Arabia, take water, okay? Okay, let's keep going. Fine. So this is not just an image, this image of the ladder, rather... what I was just trying to say is that the day started a little bit dark with this, like, communication being cut off, but I'm thankful for our conversation now. It feels like we're reconnecting. All right, so God says to him, I am Hashem, the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac. The land which you are laying upon it, to you I shall give, and to your offspring. The sages say, like, the whole land of Israel was folded underneath him at that time. My brother recently took a picture where he was like laying down on a giant map. So I sent him this verse. And then it says, your seed will be like the dust of the earth. Ufaratzta yama v'kedma tzafona v'negba. Very famous song. Ufaratzta. Come on, you know it. Yama v'kedma tzafona v'negba. Right. And here's the Abrahamic part of the story. And all of the families of the earth will be blessed through you and through your seed. And then I'm going to watch over you, and I'm going to take care of you on your travels. And I'm going to bring you back to this land, for I shall not leave you until I've done what I promised you. So the promise in that verse is the promise of great return, personally for Jacob, but I think this verse can be read as a promise for all generations. I won't leave you, Jacob, the people, or Israel, the people. I will not leave you until I've brought you to this land. This to me is the verse that is the most moving verse about should the Jewish people be and gather in the land of Israel. God says it to Jacob, I will not leave you in the diaspora outside of the land of Israel until I've ingathered you. And speaking, by the way, of ingathering, I just want to take 1 second before I let you talk about that, Rav Mike. I just want to tell you that we have a Chuck saying shalom from South Carolina. We've got Eric, who says shalom from the holy city of Rehovot. It was last week's Parsha. Eric got a shout out of Rehovot. Olivera says, good morning. And Dominique says shalom from San Antonio. And Erica says shalom from Sweden. So we got an international operation going on here. And I think all the people that are listening right now probably agree with that very sentence that God says to Jacob, he will ingather the people, the Jewish people from all over the world and bring you back to this land. I won't leave you until I've done that.
I mean, it's an important concept that God doesn't leave Am Yisrael in exile. Right, and today we take it for granted because it's kind of the way we understand the abstraction of the divine. But don't ignore the radical stance that this is in the ancient world, that God is not bound to land, right? That God says, yes, this land is a key vessel for our relationship. That's why I've appeared to you here. He says, and Yaakov wakes up in the morning and, the Angela, Beit Elohim, this is the house of God. But what God's saying is that ultimately, Yaakov, you are the vessel for relationship. Whether you're in exile, when you come home, and I think it's an important sort of swinging back of the pendulum, as we've spoken about many times, to build into our understanding of our return the importance of the journey we've taken to get here. All the experiences, the attachment to the diversity and breadth of the world. Also, the humble awareness that being here is not a guarantee.
Right.
That we are here by grace of God, and we are in exile by grace of God as well.
You're absolutely right, and and this is the one place where I break with some of my Zionist friends and colleagues. The one place where I have come to a disagreement over the years is that I've come to the conclusion that diaspora is a natural mode, an organic mode, a not a kind of false, fake aberration, right? It's like part of the Jewish experience, and this parsha kind of proves it. But I will bring you back. But bring back all those experiences. Bring back all that knowledge that you've gained at Laban's house, Lavonne's house, and bring it to the service. When I travel outside of the land of Israel, I have friends who have a hard time really enjoying, like, they're so deeply Zionistic that they have a hard time enjoying beauties of California, let's say. I myself enjoy it, but especially when I see human success, human ingenuity, I say, this is beautiful. Let me think about how we could bring it back to the land of Israel as well. And I also honor the Gentiles and their knowledge through that. I think it's important to honor people and to say, I have a little gift that I got from an F-35 or F-18 Hornet pilot, and he had a patch of Israel, U.S. joint flying, and he says to me, and I said to him, how are the Israeli pilots? He's like, they're great, they're this and that. And he starts saying to them a lot of nice stuff about them. But I said to him, but I just want you to know, you have a lot to teach them. I'm sure you do. And he's like, well, they know what they're doing. I'm like, no. I know that you've brought knowledge of the airplane that you guys make, and it's America. You guys are first in flight. Like, I'm sure you have what to teach these guys, even if they're brash Israelis. And he actually looked at me and he smiled, and I could see that he was thankful that I was able to recognize that there are some things that they are quite good at, and they could teach us know-it-all Israelis, right?
I do have to note that once again you've named another state motto. If anybody can tell us which state is
that's first right. First in flight. First in flight.
Don't
that's
give
right.
away.
I'm not giving away. I'm still moved by the flight story.
I mean,
yeah,
it's mythic in its proportions. I mean, that's why the imagination immediately goes to space flight and the next horizon. I mean, this goes back to Yaakov and his ability to dream. Is that one of the important aspects of the experience of dreaming? Is it just casts a little bit doubt on the relationship between perception and reality, right? It's one of the biggest challenges that this big brain that we have poses to us, is that we confuse perception and reality, and that limits us. It's a very important tool for managing, but it limits us, and therefore dreaming just casts little doubt on it. In the same way that flight, I mean, we talk about a flight of fancy, right? Right. And that's because we become free to go to places that we would not otherwise be able to go.
That's right. And it's all the way from the Greek mythology, from like Icarus, right? It's like a deep...
come on, the first human being that looked up and watched this bird go from the ground to the tree to the ground said, oh, I want that. Like, whoever told the stories about it is,
So Barbara says, Shalom from Florida, great Torah. Chuck says, North Carolina. He writes, I think, first in flight. That's right, North Carolina. Although, of course, we all know that the Wright brothers were from Ohio.
Dayton, Ohio, right? The whole thing. I'm from Ohio. Right. I would go there. The motto first in flight, I think, is, if I'm not mistaken, it's North Carolina.
That's right. And then Anne says, Shalom from the UK. Always a pleasure to listen to you. And Ellie says, Spodek says, climb up the ladder. slide down the slide, and he makes a little smiley face. Very good. Very good.
Yavin.
Okay, I'm even Yavin. That's right. Now, Yaakov wakes up, and he says something. This used to be a joke of mine in Beitel. Achen yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh v'anochi lo yadati. There is God in this place, and I didn't even know it. I used to say that from time to time in Beitel when I lived there. I'd be like, "There's God here," but I didn't even know it. That was a little joke of mine. But in any case, actually, the truth is if you want to go to a holy town in the land of Israel, Beit El is a holy town. Truthfully, it is one of the towns that I could really say is one of the holier places, like in terms of the population that lives there, like holiness, righteousness, a love of Torah is a very physical. It's manifest there. You can really, really feel it. It's a holy town, a holy place. I say that really without any reservations. It's one of the holiest places I've seen, and it doesn't have like some of the issues and problems that other places had. It's just there's a holiness there. And he says, how awful is this place? Awful in the sense of awful.
Awesome.
Not awesome. Awesome. This is none other. Ein ze ki'im beit Elohim, v'ze shar hashamayim. This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of the heavens. Now, Beit El is one of the highest towns in the land of Israel. And so it's high on that level, but it's also, now here's where the Rashi jumps in and he says, well, guess what? The Temple Mount is a fidgety mountain, and one of the places that it jumped to is that it jumped to Beit El in order for this, the Temple Mount was underneath him when he was having this prayer. Yes, the town is the town of Beit El, but the spiritual significance is that it was on the Temple Mount. And that's how you reconcile between these two places, because Beit El is not the Temple Mount, and yet Beit El means the house of God, which is obviously where the temples will stand subsequent to this vision. So it has both. I asked, there's a guy named Chagi Ben Artzi, very famous kind of researcher and writer who lives in Beit El and is the brother of Sarah Netanyahu, as he oftentimes reminds us, and he said, I asked him, so why is there this division between Beit El and Jerusalem? Like, who needs it? Why didn't Yaakov just go all the way back to Jerusalem and we wouldn't have had this problem? And he said, well, the answer is, this was a very interesting answer. He said, Beit El, you can actually see north all the way to the Hermon, south past Jerusalem into Gush Etzion and the Hebron Hills. To the east, you could see it some places all the way to the Jordan Valley, and west towards the Mediterranean and the Gaza Strip. And this is where he was able to receive the blessing of Faratz ta Yama v'kedma tzafona v'negba. You'll expand greatly. Yama is westerly, Yama v'kedma easternly, tzafona northernly, v'negba into the south. You could actually visualize that. You cannot do that in Jerusalem.
Interesting. I mean, it's I think it's also part of this whole theme of course, the Temple Mount is a place, but it's also a state of being, right? And then it was Yaakov's. The Midrash says that Yaakov made it all the way to Haran, and the minute that he realized, I didn't pray in the place where my ancestors did, he turned around to go back, and he experienced Kfitat Derech, right? That literally he jumped, he apparated, he teleported, however you want to think of it. But the reality is that this image that you gave of the earth folding under him, I think, is more accurate, which is he reached a state of consciousness by divine grace that is beyond time and space. That wherever his will was, wherever his thoughts were, like the Baal Shem Tov says, there he was.
Right.
Right. And so he was both in Beit El and in Yerushalayim in that moment. That's like where his thoughts were.
That's strong.
And this is, again, going back to this whole idea of makom. Right? That God is the only place. And when God is the place, then all the physical and mental pieces that we're used to dividing into separate, that's not the way it works, because there's only one. Right? And so therefore he's able to be, expression of this deepest will.
We're living in a time where this idea that where your thoughts are is where you are, it's never been as poignant as today.
It's making a comeback.
Well, has there ever been a time where you could be sitting like I am right now, where I am, and you are where you are, but we're in a different place, or the people that are right now watching us from Manchester, are actually in the land of Israel, because that's where their concentration is. That's where their thought. Has there ever been a time where you could really be transported intellectually, your mind, and just be not locked in? It sounds like an Eastern song. Like the farther one travels, the less one really goes. Remember that song,
Right.
"The Inner Light," by the Beatles. Love that song, which was a Tao Te Ching song. Which is like you don't have to leave anywhere from your room anymore in order to be anywhere in the world. Okay. But speaking of Tao Te Ching, we have right now a comment from Mark Pickles, who writes, "Shalom from Manchester, UK, former home of Chaim Weizmann. Thank you for a fascinating discussion, discursive, as in the symbolism of the latter, and the adventures of history to its fulfillment and blessings for all nations. Amen." And when we remember the words of Mark, we remember his last name, which is Pickles, and that reminds us of a segue of our good friend Chaim, who is making awesome Ashkenazi revival pickles and an excellent harif sauce, a spicy sauce, and excellent herring. Of which
I might need a delivery made to you this Shabbos.
That's right. We can talk about that. And that's what you're talking about is exactly what Prohibition Pickle is doing right now. If you go to prohibition.pickle@gmail.com or check out Prohibition Pickle on Facebook, you can order for your best friends, your rabbis, your rebbitzins, your aunts, your uncles in the land of Israel.
Your own enjoyment.
Oh, of course, if you're in the land of Israel, because there's no deliveries outside of the land of Israel at this time currently. And for my UAE friends, not yet, but brace yourselves.
Do you think they eat herring in the UAE? They will.
Ashkenazi revival is huge in the UAE. Okay, so if you check out Prohibition Pickle, you will have an awesome opportunity to eat or give food for an awesome Shabbos experience. You do not have to be Ashkenazi. You could be quite Sephardi. And I myself have Spanish blood in me. My brother always reminds me we have a family of Don Yechie, anyway, from Spanish blood. In any case, that's right. That's right. You thought, give a little respect, Rev Mike, okay?
You about it as Ashkenazi as they get.
No. And so check out Prohibition Pickle and support. And thank you so much for those people who are sending their favorite show hosts some Prohibition Pickles. Check it out. And also, now if you need stuff for you outside of the land of Israel, check out blessedbyisrael.com, and you can get cool stuff. Warning, watch out for the locust power bars. I'm not sure they're certified kosher. Okay, so watch out for the locust power bars, and I've never eaten locust, so watch out for that. But everything else at blessedbyisrael.com is awesome, so check that out. And, of course, there's a coupon code Yishai, which gives you 12% off.
But not on the locust.
But not on the... Don't get the... I cannot vouch for the locust. But I can vouch totally for every cream that they have at salvesofjerusalem.com, where you get natural goodness from the Holy Land. Remember, don't mind the myrrh next time, right?
Don't mind the myrrh.
That's so Monty Python a long time ago. Now, mind the myrrh and put it on your face, and you will glow like what? Like Moses' face. Like what else?
Like that.
Yeah. So check out Salves of Jerusalem. Obviously, coupon code Yishai will give you 10% off. Excellent Jewish news and Israel news comes from JewishPress.com. Unless you think that Israel is a thieving occupier, then don't go to JewishPress.com.
No, you might be disappointed in the op-ed section.
That's right. You may want to skip that, but then JewishPress.com for those people who love Israel and love the Jewish story. And finally, HebronFund.org. Next week, we'll be having our big yearly dollar campaign. I say dollar as opposed to shekel campaign. It's going to be a cause match, and I'm excited for everybody to I'll send out a link, and I'm excited for everybody to help build the Jewish community of Hebron, including a dream of mine for new world-class toilets. Can I please get a world-class toilet in Hebron for the tomb of the mothers and fathers?
Pray tell is a world-class toilet.
You know what?
We can talk about it another time. I don't want to know. Let
me put it to you this way. Do you know what a not world-class toilet is?
I have been to Hebron. Yes.
Right. A not world-class toilet is what we have, and I'd like to have a world-class toilet.
World-class. Okay.
There you go. All right. Let's get back to our Torah. We have hello. Simon says good afternoon from South Africa. Rensk says shalom from the Netherlands. And also somebody's asking for a prayer. Please say a special prayer for my brother Avram ben Rachel Mindel, who's in the hospital with COVID and pneumonia.
Wow.
Simon or Simone, we wish you a refuah shlema for Avram ben Rachel Mindel. Berefuah shlema mamash b'zchut avot v'imot. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so he wakes up, and he's going to make a promise. He's going to say, he takes the stone in singular as opposed to plural. How did that happen, Rav Mike? How does a plural stones, and our rabbis tell us there are 12 stones in under his head or around his head, they become one. How do you fuse 12 stones into one with the turn of a phrase? How does that happen?
Once again, it's all about understanding. I mean, the symbolism stages are reaching for when they speak about 12 stones as opposed to just one is the 12 tribes, 12 children that he's going to, give birth to in well, not just most of them in the rest of this parsha. But, what makes 12 tribes one people? What makes 12 children one family, right? It's an idea.
Right. Now, Rav Mike, this week's Torah portion has this stones that turns into stones. It has, in a minute, we'll see the stone that they have to roll off of the well in order to water the flock. And it has stones at the end, which is where they build a wall between Lavonne and right.
It's not a wall, it's a monument.
It's a monument. And so the word stones appears. There's one more word, which is when Rachel will say, let me give my handmaiden to Yaakov so that I could be built from her. So it's ve'ebaneh, from which means building, which is the same root as Evan. How many times does the root Evan appear in the Torah portion?
Well, I mean,
so you have it here 3 times, and then you have it with the stone, with the big stone, with the roll off the stone, and then you've got that monument and this word ebaneh mimena, which I'll be built from it. The root Evan appears exactly 12 times in the Torah portion. Okay, I counted them last night, so I was like psyched that the rabbis had in their there was another
in their arsenal.
Well, when they said it was 12 stones underneath his head, there was a asmachta to it, right? There's something that so that was beautiful. Okay, fine. But this is the part I want to get to, and then we got to run through the rest, which is Yaakov takes an oath, and he says, "Imi Elokimi madi, if God will be with me, ushamrani baderech hazeh asher ani olech, and protects me in this path." In this particular path, not many paths, in this path which I am going. V'natan li lechem le'echol u'beged le'lbosh, and he'll give me bread to eat and clothes to wear. V'shavti b'shalom el beit avi, and if I return in peace to the house of my father, v'haya Shem li Elohim, and God will be a God unto me. V'evan azot, and this stone, asher samti matzevah, which I put as a pillar, yiyeh beit Elohim, will be a house of God. And everything that you give me on this path, I will tithe to you. Now, a human being needs 3 things: food, clothing, and shelter, right? And he says, give me food, give me clothing, but shelter, I'll build for you, God. Shelter's not for me. Shelter's for you. I'm on the path. I'm on the journey. There is no permanent house for me. And I don't need a permanent house because I'm on the road. And you're the one who needs the house, God. And let me be the one who, when I finish this journey, when I come back, let this journey at the end be that I get the honor of building you a house in this world. And to me, this is the Jewish story in one phrase. We're on the road. We're on the path. We've got a journey. And at the end of that journey, we build a house for God. He doesn't build it for himself, and he doesn't build it for us. We build it for him. That's the great honor that we have. Sometimes people say God will send it. There's sages, sources that say that God will bring down the third temple, and I say, please don't. don't take away my opportunity to build for you. Like that's the one thing we could give back to you, God. Everything else is yours. If you could just give us the chance to build a house for you. And so I think that's what Jacob is saying. He's saying, I'm on the journey. Just protect me on this way. And at the end of it, I will build you a house.
I mean, it's a beautiful sentiment. And what it makes me think is that, in a sense, the way that Am Yisrael is different than the average human condition is, like you said, food, clothing, shelter. So everyone needs sustenance. That's a biological necessity. Clothing is dignity. And I think that's a very important, human trait as well. Our sages say in many places that clothing represents kabod, right? But what you're pointing out is that we don't actually need shelter. Exile has proven that. What we need is spiritual shelter.
Right.
And in order to have that, we build a house for God where we can meet. Of course, God doesn't need a house. God doesn't lack for anything. But really, we're building a home. It's not just a house, right? A place where we can be together. And it's something that we need to take to heart, because the reality is, at this stage of the Jewish story here, as I look out the window at the holy city of Jerusalem in Talpiot, it's easy to forget that we've built ourselves a shelter, but we haven't actually built a home for God yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right. We're still on that path. In any case, Now he's gotten this dream, but he's also been given a lot of confidence. The confidence is that God is with me, even though I'm broken, even though I'm heading towards exile. God says to me, "I'm with you, and I want you to go on this trip for some reason. I need you to leave the land, and I need you to learn the stuff there. I need you to pick up a wife, 2 wives, maybe 2 wives and 2 handmaidens to build up the Jewish story, right?" And by the way, your other website, Rav Mike, is jewishstory.co and ravmikefeuer.com. I want everybody
RavMike.com.
Just ravmike.com?
Yep.
Oh my God, what is going on with me? My brain is.
I'm on the.
Huh?
You're slipping.
I'm slipping. It's true because I haven't had like a prohibition pickle in like days because I'm finished with them.
It's hard. It's hard.
So ravmike.com and jewishstory.co. Thank you so much for all you do, and people could check out your other show there, the Jewish Story Show, and also your spiritual counseling, which is so helpful to so many. Yaakov, will run through this part a little bit faster. Yaakov is going to go into exile, and of course he's going to see, he's going to have love at first sight. And who wouldn't, right? Rachel is an amazing woman, and she is a shepherdess. We learned that Lavonne probably at that time did not have any male children, and so he sent out Rachel as a shepherdess, and he's going to feel a loving passion for her right from the get-go. He's gonna move this big stone off of the well so that the other shepherds could water their flock, and kind of show in a sense he shows that there's something. The obvious symbolism is that there's something superhuman about him at certain moments. There's superhuman abilities. He's able to move this rock. Is it through ingenuity, like the Turner Classics movie about Jacob shows him using donkeys to move the big rock off the stone. And so, I
have a different shot on this whole part of the story, and it's never really sat well with me. It's a little bit hard to believe that what we're dealing with here is simply a technical issue, that the shepherds are waiting because it's too big for us to move. I mean, you'd think if that were the case, one of them would have figured it out and gotten his way with it. I think what you're dealing with is a social convention. Is that, remember, a be'er is usually, it's not a mayan. It's not a source of living water. It's a water hole that fills through the wet season and therefore has limited resource. And so there's a social convention agreement amongst the shepherds that we don't roll the stone off until everybody's here. Right? And then there'll be a distribution of the water. But Yaakov, how we always say, ahava milkalkelet et hashura, right? Love sort of totally disrupts the natural order. And in many ways, this is a consistent Yaakov move. He's a disruptor. I had the great privilege of doing an interview with Rav Barrel Wine last night. Yesterday.
How did that go?
Well, first of all, oh my gosh, he is not young, but thank God is in good health and compos mentis. I was a little nervous because he appeared frail to me at the beginning, but that was not the case. But one of the things that he said, and it's very important to remember all the time, is that the Jews have always been swimming upstream. Always been swimming upstream. And here's a great example with Yaakov. He says, "Oh yeah, I hear that's the convention, but we're gonna do it my way right now." And that there's a price to be paid for that for sure, but it's what brings newness into the world.
So startup nation type of thing. That's what you're saying.
Disruptor. He's a disruptor.
Disruptor, yeah. I mean, the greatest disruption of them all has been Zionism. It has disrupted Christianity.
Well, since Yaakov. Since Abraham. Right. Probably the greatest disruptor of all.
I'm saying in the last 100 years, the greatest disruption of them all is Zionism. It's completely disrupted everything. It disrupted Christendom. It disrupted Islam. It disrupted Judaism.
One of the ways to understand why the world has always found a reason to hate us is because we never fit the mold. So the Roman Empire, we were indigestible part of their empire. The Christians, we were refusers of salvation. To the modern world, we were sort of like this indelible alien. And now, basically, in the postmodern world, we're the story that just won't die.
Right.
That refuses to be reduced to just a power equation about oppressors and oppressed. Because, we're more complicated than that.
that guy El Gindi, I wrote back to him even though he had already blocked me, but then I deleted the tweet. But I wrote to him, I'm like, I'm sorry that you've decided to terminate the conversation. I'll be here in Greater Israel anytime you want to talk again.
That's just mean. Now you're just being mean.
But I'm not being. But I'm not being mean. I'm being really nice. He's mean, and that's what it goes to what you were just saying. But it goes to what you were saying, which is we're impossible to understand for them. By the way, his most important word in that other tweet that I told you about was he said human construct. He purposefully stuck in the word human.
Of course he deliberately put that in there. Of course that wasn't an accident.
Right.
Anyway, I would hope that anyone who has reached the position of a professor in a major university doesn't accidentally put words in their tweet.
Yeah,
granted, they probably do. But
he's at Georgetown, so he's no slouch. He's just not a good.
It's never stopped people from being wrong.
Right. Yeah. I don't think he's wrong. I think he's a combatant. You know what I'm saying? He's on the other side.
Right.
I mean, obviously wrong, but you know what I mean.
Right, it's more than that, right?
Right.
Not mistaken.
Right, exactly. Okay, so fine. Then we have the very famous story. Jacob meets Lavonne. They're going to sit together. They're going to make a deal, and he wants to marry Rachel. He has to work 7 years for Rachel. Everybody remembers that. And then there is this scene that Rachel is switched out on the marriage night, on the wedding night. She switched out for Leah. The sister Leah. My daughter's named Leah after my mother-in-law dearly departed, and one of the things that my father Alav Shalom pointed out to me was Rachel gives the signs. They had these signs between them, between Rachel and Jacob. They had these codes. She gave over those codes to Leah, and that is actually a very important part of the Jewish story, where, for example, Rachel is the only one who can defend the Jewish people against idolatry when she says to God, I allowed my sister to come into the bedroom of my beloved husband because it was the right thing to do, and I kind of was able to make space for her. Yeah. So too, the Jewish people may be putting idolatry in your house of God, but just like I allowed myself to do this for the greater good, don't destroy Jewish people for the greater good.
Yeah, and that type of breadth of heart is it's hard to imagine. It's why Rachel is, of course, held up as that standard in our story, but it causes a lot of pain down the line. Right. The dynamic that Leah and Rachel have to live within, in the sense that, Yaakov, he pays, and he has his own role in that. But it's very clear as, Leah begins to produce son after son after son, that what she's seeking is Yaakov's real love. And it's exactly what she's not getting.
Well, which is a hard thing. One doesn't get the love, and the other one doesn't get the child, right? There's this tension between them. And it's hard to see that. It's painful to see this kind of tension. By the way, later on, we learn that the Torah forbids marrying two sisters alive at the same time. It's a very important point. There's many people who end up marrying a sister after one sister passes away. One time I was on a birthright trip, and there was this old guard that was with us, and I just asked about his life, and he said, yeah, we were living in the north. And one day my wife was outside, and a Katusha came and just killed her in the front yard. And then
Wow.
and then I married her sister, and she raised her sister's kids. I've heard of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Now we also come into the story of the Dudaim, which is the story of Reuven, the firstborn son, going out into the fields during the wheat harvest, and he finds these Dudaim, this so-called mandrake, in the fields. And this is if you look it up, you'll see it's a very famous plant in the ancient world, purported to have a lot of mystical qualities, including being an aphrodisiac or being a birth, a conception, fertility treatment, and many other things that are cultic and weird. But anyway, so Reuven is going to find this, and he's going to give it to his mother Leah, maybe in the hope of helping her get what she wants to get, which is the love of the full love of the husband, Yaakov. Yeah. But then Rachel asks for these dudaim. Ostensibly, maybe she wants it for conception purposes. My father, alav hashalom, used to say that really she wanted to take away the shame of the need of Leah to use this, potential, aid
to get Yaakov's love.
To get Yaakov's love. She's like, let me take that away from you. You don't need that. And indeed, Leah spends that night with Yaakov. Now, the reason I mention this is because this conception aid, this plant mandrake, is coupled in this Torah portion with another effort to help conceive, and that is Jacob's ability to cause his flock to give birth to the speckled, ringed, and and striped, yeah, speckled, ringed, and striped. And one of the more mysterious kind of passages in the Torah about how he gets wealth by this ingenious ability to know how to do animal husbandry and animal science, and thereby increase his flock and become wealthy through what you just said before, through exactly what you just said before, which is the disruption. I would call it this is the Torah portion of the startup nation, right? This is the startup nation. This is the drip technology. This is the cherry tomatoes, if you will, okay? This is it. Like, he's going to use and the Torah will talk about exactly in a weird way, like how he puts these sticks exactly in next to the watering holes. And right, and it's like going into detail, and the mystics go crazy on it. And the bottom line is, somehow he understood the ability to harness nature and to get his flocks to do what he wanted, and thereby become wealthy while in Haran, while outside of the land of Israel. This is going to cause a cascade of jealousy by Lavonne and his sons. Now he has sons. Before he didn't have sons. Now he's been, according to Rashi, he's been blessed through Jacob's being there, and now he's had sons. But they're going to, sadly, instead of being thankful, they're going to become jealous of Jacob. His face is going to change, meaning to say his face, the way he looks at Jacob and his wealth is going to change. And finally, there's going to be another scene, which is in two different verses. God is going to tell Jacob, it's time for you to go. It's time for you to go back to the land of Israel. Remember that promise. And here I am not exaggerating, this happens to be one of my top 5 favorite verses in the whole Torah. Okay?
I'm counted 89 so far.
Yeah, so but this is really one of the top 5. I'm serious. This is really one of the top 5. And it happens to be that my good friend Chaim David Sirachik, the famous Chaim David, wrote a tune to this very verse, which I love as well. And it's God telling him, Anochi Ha'el Beit El. I, Hashem, am the God of Beit El. I'm the God of Beit El. I'm the God of the house of God. That's the place where you and I connected. And he says, Asher Mashachta Sham Matzeva. This is chapter 31, verse 13, which you there anointed the monument. Asher Nadarta Li Sham Neder. That's where you made an oath to me. Ata, now, kum, get up. Tzeh min haaretz hazot. Leave this land, v'shuv el eretz moladetecha, and return to the land of your family or the land of your birth. But to me, this idea that God says, I am the God of Beit El, I'm the God of the land of Israel, I'm the God of what you said was going to be the house of God, I'm going to tie myself, bind myself to a place. And not just I'm the God of the world, the universe, I created everything. No. I'm in the super particular. I'm the God who dwells, whose presence dwells there where you put me, where you've honored me. That's where I am. That to me is a very powerful thing. I'd love to hear your comments on that.
I mean, I think the most essential element is I'm the God with whom you can have a relationship. Right? Because you don't have a relationship to the infinite. You can't. Right? It's incomprehensible. And the sort of power, to go back to the beginning of the parsha, of this name Makom, right, we've spoken about many times, like, the world is not God's place, but God is the place of the world. And yet, there's a place in which we come to meet God. That the great love and humility which is embodied in granting Yaakov and his children, somewhere where we can be at home with God, right, is a tremendous gift that that really runs as a thread throughout the parsha.
Julie says Boker Tov from New York, but Sunil Gumpula says hallelujah. He's from India. Shalom from India. And he says hallelujah. That's simple. One more thing that I forgot to mention is that before Jacob, Yaakov gets the message that it's time to go back home, there's another little telltale sign. Rachel is remembered and finally has a son, and that son is Yosef. And when that happens, that is a signal to Yaakov, my time here is completed. I can go on now. And Rachel is destined to have yet another son where she's going to die at childbirth, and that's going to be Binyamin. That's not in this week's parsha. But this is a signal to him that time is over. But instead of doing a nice goodbye party, he's going to...
he's learned from experience to just get out of town.
Just get out of Dodge. You got to get out of Dodge. And you can't be held up. Which experience do you mean? Oh, with Esav. Well,
with Esav, but also he's learned from experience that Lavonne won't make anything simple.
Right. So there's no going away party. So you're just gonna have to bust out.
Also, let's remember that it's not all such a pretty picture, because Yaakov is also just simply like the rest of us. He's formed certain habits. One of his habits is avoidance of conflict. Mm-hmm. So I'm just gonna do the end run. I'll just sneak out.
But also his wives, they themselves give him the thumbs up. It's a beautiful scene where the wives meet with Jacob in the field, and he lays out the case. And he is a bit of a lawyer, he lays out the case. He's like, look, you know that I worked your father, you know that I was, honest in my dealings, you know that he tricked me all these times, and now I saw a dream that the God of Israel came to me and said, come on home. I love this part because the wives are like, I could just hear their voices like, boy, let's go. What are you even there's no question here. And these are women who never were in the land of Israel. These are women who this is where they're from. They're like, we're out, just like their aunt. Is it their aunt? Their aunt Rivka. Wait, yeah,
no, mother-in-law.
Mother-in-law. Thank you.
And their aunt.
Right. She's a blood relative. She's an aunt, and she says right, and she says, remember, she's like, I'm out of here, and the two wives are in the field, and they're having this face-to-face, this secret meeting in the field. You can imagine it. He's like, look, guys, we gotta go. And the wives are like, let's go. You know what I mean? Our children, right? We're waiting, and let's go. And then Lavonne is going to hear. This is very interesting. He's going to hear that Jacob ran away. The Baal HaTurim says that the person who tells them is actually Amalek. Amalek wants to stop the Jewish people from coming back to the land of Israel at all costs. And so he's going to whisper in the ear of, in this case, Lavonne, and tell him, guess what? Jacob is running to the land of Israel. Make chase after them and stop them. And one more little episode, which is Rachel will steal, as they're going, she'll steal her father's trophim, his idolatry. The word trophy comes from the word trophim. It's the same word. Absolutely, it's the same word, trophy and trophim. It's this thing, that sits on the pedestal. Two different versions of that. The
that up.
You do that. The Trafim. The Trafim are either that she wants. Rashi says that she wants her father to stop serving these idols, but a version that I like a little bit more because it's a little bit more exciting and a little bit more. What's his name? That child magician guy again? Harry Potter. It's a little bit more Harry Potterish. These are talking heads. They've been severed, but they still yap, and they were actually going to tell on Jacob that he ran away, so he had to silence them by actually stealing them and then later sitting on them. That'll shut him up. And you can imagine them kind of trying to be like, I'm here, and Rachel sitting on them and being like, no, sorry, they're not here. Rachel will steal them. This will also bring upon her a curse because Jacob will say, whoever has stolen these will die. This will cause Rachel to die prematurely. Why that is maybe outside the scope of our discussion. Or you want to say something? Go ahead.
Well, it's a heavy idea, but what the Gemara says is something worth thinking about, which is that everything that a tzaddik says has a reality. That's beyond just careful what you say. It goes consistently with this thing that we've been speaking about, which is that we create reality. We're not a passive observer of it. And someone on Yaakov's level, the casual statements from his mouth, will have real world effects.
That's right. Finally, but Lavonne as we say here in Israel, hu lo frayer. Okay, he ain't no pushover, and he catches up with Yaakov. And this is what you said before, that Yaakov maybe runs away from conflict. This is the first of the conflicts. He's going to be in conflict with Lavonne, but maybe more like a battle of words, a battle of wills, a bit of a lawyerly type of battle where one is going to claim, hey, you cheated me every single time, and Lavonne is going to say, everything that's yours is mine. What's that?
It says, come on, man, it's all good.
Oh, is that what you think he says?
No, meaning like, what are you worried about with these children? They're mine. The cattle, it's mine.
Is that how you see that? I see it differently. I thought it's like, bro, your claim that you're a separate entity from me is ridiculous. Everything that you have comes from me. I own you. I'm your.
You could also look at it that way. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you always say, let's just touch here for a second. Well, I'll finish off the story. The narrative is that they're going to have words. Finally, there's going to come to an understanding, and then there's going to be a monument or a type of barrier built. That separates. It's a marker. That separates Lavonne as his region, kind of to the north, and then Yaakov and the land of Israel to the south and to the west. And you always, I wanted to ask you because you always mention that we say in the Pesach Haggadah that Lavonne wanted to uproot everything, and so that ties into me. Like he's like, I own you. Yep. Everything about you is me.
No, I agree absolutely. I mean, not only that, but to go back to an earlier part of the story, why was it that it was Yosef's birth that triggers Yaakov's return to the land of Israel? Because don't forget that Yosef is born at the firstborn son of Rachel. Rachel is the woman that Yaakov actually intended to marry, which means on some level Yosef is actually Yaakov's firstborn in his mind, which is important to remember with all the difficulties that will come between the brothers in the Parshiot to come. And on that level, the fact that Lavonne tried to switch Rachel and Leah was an attempt to erase that whole future that Yosef represents.
And so the minute he's born, there's a completion to that mission in Yaakov's mind.
Next phase is ready.
Very powerful. And the last verse of the Torah portion of VaYetze, which is in Genesis, finishing up with chapter 31 and going to chapter 32, is that when Jacob was now coming to the land of Israel, and angels met him. This is obviously a what's the fancy word for when something closes what like a beginning of a chapter? I think it's called inclusio. I think I remember that like the end matches the beginning. Now he is coming back to the land of Israel, and angels are meeting him. And Jacob said when he saw this camp of angels, he called it Machanaim, camps. that reminds us of the angels in the heavens and angels in the earth going up and down in that ladder. Now they're coming together in one camp. He sees this angel, but it's really two camps called Machanaim. And Rashi will say these are the angels of outside of the land of Israel leaving, and the angels of the land of Israel greeting him.
Indeed.
Rav Mike Feuer, I've taken up a lot of your time. I want to thank you so much for joining us. I want everybody to check out your new website, which is ravmike.com, and also jewishstory.co. And check out your other show with great interviews recently as well, and your Jewish history podcast called The Jewish Story, and also your spiritual, what's the word I use? Spiritual counseling. That's right, spiritual counseling. Like Diana Troy. You're like a more Tsunua addressed Diana Troy.
That's just for the goodness of everyone.
All right, folks, you are listening to the Yishai Fleishner Show. Thank you, Rav Mike, for joining us. And more great stuff is on the way. I'm going to sign off now on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. But Malka Fleischer will be on the podcast, so don't miss that at the Land of Israel Network, one of the great sponsors of the show, the Land of Israel Network. Also, Rav Mike's other shows also at the Land of Israel Network. Simon Zelkin says, thank you as usual. Very interesting and uplifting. Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. What a schut it is to talk about God's beautiful Torah. And the only thing I want to ask you this week is I want you to do me a favor. I want you to send me a picture of an awesome ladder that you drew, that your kids drew, that you took a picture of, that a ladder, some kind of representation of a ladder, and be creative. So send me a hashtag. Even the hashtag itself is a little ladder, isn't it? Isn't the hashtag just a little ladder?
Whoa.
That's right. The hashtag is a ladder, friends. So, and it's also a tic-tac-toe board, but don't worry about that because that's not what we're talking about. So do me a favor and send me hashtag or Rav Mike, which is Rav Mike at thelandofisrael.com, or Yishai at thelandofisrael.com, or YishaiFleischer.com. Send me a hashtag ladder with a picture, with a drawing, with a thought, with a representation of a ladder. If it's in the challah, if it's in whatever you want, make a challah ladder this week. I want you to really imbibe and embody this issue of a ladder, because that's the meditation of the week. And I want you to see if you could show it to me or show it to us in any way. And of course, I'll try to put it up on social media as well. Rav Mike Feuer, thanks for climbing the ladder with me. Now it's time to climb down and to get back to the stuff that we're doing out there. So thanks so much.
It's a pleasure. Shabbat Shalom.
All right, folks. Shabbat Shalom. More great stuff is on the way. So stay tuned, stay connected, and Shalom.